Welcome back to another weather update, guys. Today is National Weather Person's Day, and we got a really great gift from some of the weather data that just came out, at least if you're a snow lover, that is. To the right of me here was some of the data that came out from the European model, and it's spitting out a ton of snow, and that's what you're seeing on this map. Any of those colors that are in red, that's at least a foot of snow over about the next 2 weeks across the country, and those colors in orange and some of those whites, that's about 3 feet or more in a lot of spots. So a ton of data saying it's going to snow a lot. Now, is this completely correct? No, probably not. But in this video, we're going to talk about why there is still a very good chance for snow for much of the country and why some of the numbers here may not be too far-fetched. So without further ado, let's jump into the exciting snow forecast ahead. Unlike some channels that'll just slap a bunch of numbers in your face and tell you this is what's going to happen, I want you to understand why we're going to see favorable conditions for snow. And we're going to start with the big picture. It also helps you know this is a legitimate forecast. And what you're seeing here are colder and warmer than average air masses indicated by the blue colors and the orange colors here. And there's two things I want to point out. The first is we have several of these little bubbles, we'll call them, skirting across the country, one after another. And those are actually storm systems one by one that are going to go flying across the northern tier of the U.S. We also have warmer than average air in Alaska, which allows Arctic air to get into the country. And we have this ridge, this warmer than average air across much of the south, and that's going to keep those storm systems far enough north that they interact with the cold air and basically allow for snow instead of just rain and storms. And I'll move this forward a bit more. You're going to continue to see this pattern remain pretty stable, but there are some changes that come in the second week of February. You'll notice we don't have as much warm air near Alaska, but we trade that out for something else that's beneficial. Warm air near Greenland, and what that's going to do is it's going to slow down our storm systems as they move across the country, and you actually have bigger snowstorm potential because of that, as now, instead of our storms moving quickly, they move slower and there's more time for them to drop snow. So just wanted you to understand what's going on in the background, and now we'll take a look at how much snow will fall and when we're most likely to see storms coming up in the forecast. What you're looking at now may look a lot like what I showed you at the start of the video, and in a lot of ways it is, but it's a more averaged out map of potential snowfall, and it gives us a good idea of where the most likely places are for significant snow between now and the middle to end of the month. And once again, you're seeing this bullseye out here in the Northeast, which, especially New England, which is most certainly the most favorable place for widespread heavy snow. I'll also mention, though, the West Coast, especially the mountains out here, is very likely to see some heavy snow. The Rockies and the Sierra Nevadas all the way up into British Columbia, we're likely to see a lot of heavy precipitation. But I'll also mention this is a very strong signal even in the central part of the country that snowy weather is likely. And you'll also notice it actually reaches reasonably far south as well. I mean, states like Oklahoma, even northern Arkansas, Virginia, still have a good chance to see some real snow this month. And this is just our European data. If we take the American data, this backs it up further. In fact, you're seeing perhaps an even better chance for snow in the Northeast and pretty similar chances out here in the West and the central U.S. And it still extends pretty far south as well. Not so bad for February, especially one that looked as though it might be near average, if not warmer than average for much of the country. But I also want to show you the timing for these potential snowstorms, and we're just going to run through the European model, the latest data we got. Of course, we got a storm that comes through here on the 6th, which is when we're recording this more or less. We also have another system that's expected to form as soon as next week, and you're going to notice that these storms are going to come through one after another, basically, seemingly every 3 to 5 days. Our next storm, it originates out here in the northern Rockies, and it's going to cut again through a very similar part of the country, the north central U.S., Midwest, and reaching the northeast as well. I also want to point out at the end of this video, we'll take a quick deep dive into this. So if you're curious about the forecast for the upcoming weekend, which will be the 8th and 9th, you'll want to stick around for the end of this. But what we're seeing here is this system comes through, could bring some heavy snow, some mixing as well. We'll keep moving this forward, and without much of a wait, we see another system begin to develop. This one a little bit different, bigger snowstorm potential as we get into the week, or the window of about, we'll call it the 11th and 12th. You're getting more moisture out of the Gulf with this one, and you're going to see it ride up the coast as well. And whenever you get the moisture out of the Gulf, you have more to work with in terms of snow. Just like that, we got another system that's beginning to move into the West Coast later in the week. We're going to see that one spread across the U.S. We'll have to wait and see if these two systems can interact here. If they do, we could be looking at a big one in the window of the Valentine's Day, the 14th, and potentially even 15th. That could be a really good one if those two phase. And we still have more activity. Another system that tries to get going just a few days later than that. This is now February 16th, and we have bigger storm potential as we get that blocking farther north. Certainly you're seeing the theme here, storm one after another, originating generally in the west, and then taking a little bit of a break in the central U.S. before we get two waves to meet up in the east. And that's where you get some of your big blockbuster storm potential. So that's really the picture here. But as I mentioned, we have one storm at least that we can zero in on. So let's take a look at the snow you can expect as we move into this second weekend of February. And this will impact much of the northern U.S. and the northeast. So once again, here's that storm system moving in off the Pacific here. It's going to bring some snow to the Sierra Nevadas as soon as the 6th, actually. And we're going to watch this move across the country, reaching the northern Rockies on the 7th and continuing through the upper Midwest on the 8th here. And this is where it gets more interesting, begins to drop snow. But it really comes together once it reaches the northeast. And we're going to take a closer look at this in about 30 seconds. But for those of you guys in the Midwest, I wanted to show you what you're up against, and we're going to take a look here at the potential for snowfall from this. Not going to be the biggest storm, but a pretty good one. At least Sierra Nevadas out here could see, a foot and a half pretty easily. But for the rest of the Rockies, you're looking at amounts in those purple colors that may be up to a foot. The dark blues, generally speaking, are going to be 6 inches or so. And you're seeing this again bring a good 6 inches of snow to much of the upper Midwest here before it begins to get into the Northeast, and that's where it's going to bring more. So let's take a closer look. And here we are again, our storm moving into the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic first. You're seeing all those red colors. That indicates we could see some pretty serious freezing rain once again. That's where we get some real issues, power outages, and inabilities to really drive or go anywhere because you can't just shovel ice. But a lot of snow on the front end of this, and as this gets into New England, meets colder air, could be a pretty heavy snow across the region. And for the Mid-Atlantic, this would be mainly a late Saturday thing. For the Northeast, this would be mainly, New England, early Sunday thing. Plenty of snow to fall out there, and likely mixing that'll stay a bit farther south, but may come into play later in the storm. Like I said, freezing rain, a big problem in this one for places like Pennsylvania, parts of the Mid-Atlantic. And in terms of snowfall, unlike the last one that we're seeing right now, there's much better 6-inch snowfall potential. Even up to 10 is possible, and you can see that centered out here through around Albany into Boston, much of the southern New England area. So this is a storm we'll be watching closely, and we'll have a much more in-depth video update on what's ahead here. So with that, we're going to wrap up this video. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And remember, be sure to subscribe, comment where you are if you need a personal forecast, or just let me know what you're seeing. And hopefully you like the winter weather, because this is a really exciting weather pattern if you do. And if you don't, well, hey, March is right around the corner. But in the meantime, we'll be busy here tracking storms for you, and you'll want to check back for updates as soon as we post.